Welcome to r/Payback. I'm a 24-year-old woman currently living with my younger sister, who's 21. We've been sharing an apartment for a while now, mostly because we're both saving up to move into our own places. On the surface, everything seemed pretty normal between us. A typical sibling relationship with its usual ups and downs. We got along most of the time, and for the most part, our living situation was fine. But as time went on, things started to change. What began as small annoyances slowly turned into something more frustrating and tense. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured living together meant sharing some things and compromising here and there. But then I noticed my sister's behavior becoming a lot more possessive and jealous, especially when it came to my clothes. I'm someone who works a decent job, and I enjoy fashion. I don't buy super expensive or designer pieces, but I do like to treat myself to clothes from brands like Zara and Abercrombie. My wardrobe is something I take pride in, and I put effort into saving for the things I want. I tried to brush off the early signs, hoping it was just a phase or a misunderstanding, but it quickly became clear this was going to be a bigger problem than I thought. What started as casual borrowing without asking soon spiraled into something I couldn't ignore anymore. This story isn't just about clothes. It's about boundaries, respect, and how far I was willing to go before I finally stood my ground. My sister has always been a little jealous, but it mostly stayed under the surface until she started borrowing my clothes without ever asking. At first, I didn't mind so much. Sometimes siblings borrow things, right? But this quickly became a daily habit. She'd take my jackets, jeans, and even some of my nicer tops without saying a word. When I noticed, I would ask her to please let me know beforehand or just ask for permission. I tried to be patient and polite, not wanting to cause unnecessary drama. After all, it's family. However, her attitude wasn't the same. She acted like she was entitled to my things and shrugged off my requests. I work hard for my money, and my clothes aren't just random items. They're pieces I save up for and care about. Some of them are gifts, some I bought on sale, and a few are rare finds that I treasure. When she treated them like they were hers to take whenever she wanted, it really hurt. It wasn't just about the clothes. It felt like a lack of respect. I tried to talk to my parents and other family members about the situation. They mostly shrugged it off, saying siblings borrow from each other all the time and that I was overreacting. No one really took my side, which made me feel a little isolated. My sister knew this too and seemed to take advantage of the fact that I was trying not to make waves in the family. That only made her bolder. Despite this, I tried to keep the peace for as long as I could. I even bought a small lock for my closet to protect my things, hoping that would finally set a clear boundary. But it didn't. Instead of respecting it, my sister saw the lock as a challenge. That was when I started to worry that this was about more than just clothes. It was about control. The first few times I confronted my sister about taking my clothes without permission, she would deny it outright or blame me for being too protective. "You're being dramatic," she'd say, or "I didn't think you cared that much." Sometimes she'd just roll her eyes and walk away, refusing to have a proper conversation. I tried to stay calm, explaining why it upset me and asking her to respect my boundaries. When that didn't work, I decided to be firmer. I put the lock on my closet door and told her clearly that I wasn't okay with her taking my things anymore. At first, she acted like it didn't bother her, but I could see the annoyance growing. A few days later, I came home to find the lock broken. Someone had clearly forced it open. I confronted her immediately, but she denied breaking it and acted innocent. That was a major red flag for me. If she wasn't willing to respect the lock, what else would she do? The tension between us started to grow, and I could tell this wasn't just about borrowing clothes anymore. I worried that the situation could escalate into something worse. I felt frustrated and helpless because every time I tried to address it calmly, she pushed back or ignored me. I also began noticing subtle things, missing items, clothes put back in the wrong place, or new tears and stains I hadn't seen before. It felt like she was deliberately trying to get under my skin. I tried talking to her again, asking her to be honest and telling her that if something was wrong, we could work it out. But all I got were smirks and sarcastic comments. The trust between us was breaking down fast. I was exhausted from trying to keep the peace and feeling like my things and feelings didn't matter. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home expecting the usual quiet apartment. Instead, I was met with a scene that felt like a nightmare. Right by the entrance, I saw a pile of my clothes scattered on the floor. At first, I thought maybe they'd fallen from the closet or laundry basket, but as I got closer, my heart sank. My favorite leather jacket, a pair of designer jeans I had saved up for months to buy, and a silk dress I had worn only once were shredded and slashed as if someone had taken a knife to them. The fabric was torn apart, buttons ripped off and stains smeared across the pieces. It looked like a scene from a horror movie. I stood frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. I felt a mix of shock, disbelief, and heartbreak all at once. How could someone do this, especially my own sister? These weren't just clothes to me. They represented my hard work, my style, and parts of my identity. Seeing them destroyed in such a violent way was devastating. Before I could even collect my thoughts, my sister walked in. Instead of showing any remorse, she smirked at me. "Maybe now you'll stop acting like you're better than everyone else," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Her eyes gleamed with a mix of satisfaction and cruelty, and I felt a cold wave of anger rise inside me. I wanted to yell, scream, and demand answers. Part of me wanted to forgive her because she's family, and the idea of turning against her felt wrong. But another part of me knew this was no accident or childish prank. It was a deliberate act of spite. I felt trapped between wanting to protect our relationship and needing to protect myself. My hands trembled as I tried to calm down, but the damage was done. I realized this was the moment I could no longer ignore what was happening. Something inside me shifted, and for the first time, I knew I had to stand up for myself, no matter the cost. In the days after that terrible night, I wrestled with what to do. For years, my family had taught me that issues like this should stay private. "Family is family," they'd say. "Don't air your dirty laundry." They believed in talking things out, forgiving and trying to keep peace no matter what. At first, I thought I should do the same. Maybe talk to my sister, try to repair the damage without involving anyone else. But the truth was, I was exhausted. I'd tried being patient and polite, but it hadn't worked. The destruction of my clothes was a line crossed. I knew that if I didn't take action, this behavior would only get worse. The thought of going back to that tense, painful environment made me feel anxious and unsafe in my own home. After careful thought, I decided it was time to involve the authorities. I wanted to send a clear message. This wasn't acceptable, and I deserved to be respected. I gathered all the evidence I could. Photos of the shredded clothes, receipts proving their value, and even pictures of the broken closet lock. I organized everything so I could show exactly what had happened. It wasn't an easy decision. I worried about the fallout, how my family would react, how my sister would respond, and whether this would break us apart completely. But I knew that protecting my boundaries and my belongings was more important. It was a matter of self-respect and safety. I called the police, my heart pounding. I told them everything, hoping they'd understand and take it seriously. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but deep down I felt relieved to finally be taking a stand. The day the police arrived was surreal. When they knocked on the door, my sister looked stunned. Maybe she thought I was bluffing or wouldn't actually take it this far. I led the officers inside and showed them the mess. I handed over the photos and receipts, explaining everything calmly but firmly. My sister's disbelief quickly turned into anger. She tried to argue and say it wasn't as bad as I claimed, but the officers listened carefully. They took notes and asked questions, making it clear they were treating this as a serious case of property damage. The broken closet lock was proof that this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. Watching my sister being arrested was emotionally draining. She still looked defiant, but there was a flicker of fear in her eyes. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but I also knew she needed to face the consequences. This wasn't just about clothes anymore. It was about respect, boundaries, and finally standing up for myself. The news spread quickly through our family. When they found out, reactions were mixed. Some were shocked, others angry, and some couldn't believe I had called the police on my own sister. I received calls and messages from parents and relatives, most telling me I went too far and that family issues should be solved privately. But I stood my ground. This was my breaking point. The emotional toll was heavy, but I felt stronger knowing I wasn't willing to let this slide any longer. It was painful, but necessary. Once the news of my sister's arrest reached my parents and other relatives, everything changed. Instead of support or understanding, I was met with harsh accusations. My parents were shocked, but quickly took my sister's side, painting me as the villain. Family issues should be handled privately, they said. You didn't have to ruin everything by calling the police. Some relatives whispered behind my back, questioning why I had to make such a big deal out of clothes. To them, it seemed petty and unforgivable. In family gatherings that followed, my sister was portrayed as a victim, a troubled girl who had made a mistake but deserved compassion, not punishment. They talked about how stressful life had been for her lately and implied that I was cold-hearted for not just forgiving and forgetting. I overheard relatives say I was too harsh and that I was breaking up the family. It was like my years of patience and quiet suffering were invisible, replaced by this image of me as the antagonist. The backlash hit me hard. I felt isolated, misunderstood, and under constant pressure to apologize or make peace. Text messages and calls poured in, many telling me to drop the charges and mend the relationship. But I knew deep down that ignoring what happened wouldn't solve anything. I had to protect myself, even if it meant going against the family's expectations. The emotional toll was enormous. I struggled with guilt and loneliness, wondering if I had made things worse. Nights were restless, filled with anxiety and second-guessing. But I also felt a growing sense of strength. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking to keep the peace. I was standing up for my worth. Despite the pain, I tried to keep my head high. I talked to a counselor to process everything, reminding myself that self-respect wasn't selfish. It was a difficult balance, wanting family love but refusing to be treated like I didn't matter. This experience changed how I viewed boundaries and what I would accept in my life. Some family ties had grown fragile, but I knew I had to prioritize my well-being. In quiet moments, I reflected deeply on whether I had done the right thing. The choice to involve the police was not easy, and doubts crept in. Was I too harsh? Could I have handled it differently? Sometimes I wondered if my sister's actions were a cry for help rather than malice. These thoughts made me question if I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. Yet, alongside the doubts, there was a strong feeling of empowerment. For the first time, I had set a firm boundary and enforced it. I realized respect wasn't just about asking nicely. It had to be demanded. I learned that protecting myself wasn't betrayal. It was necessary for my mental health and dignity. I thought a lot about my sister's future and how this might affect her. Would this create more distance between us? Could it push her toward change or only deepen resentment? I hoped this wake-up call would help her understand the consequences of her choices, but I also knew there were no guarantees. This situation taught me valuable lessons about limits, both mine and others. It made me appreciate the strength it takes to say no and stand firm, even when it hurts. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I felt more prepared to face it with clarity and courage. Now, I'm turning to you, the community, for honest judgment. Am I the a-hole for calling the police on my sister? Was I right to protect my belongings and myself, or did I go too far? I'm still struggling with these questions, and hearing different perspectives might help me understand what to do next. I want to be clear. This wasn't a decision made lightly. It was the result of years of frustration and broken trust. I didn't want to ruin family ties, but I had to draw the line somewhere. At the same time, I feel torn between wanting peace and needing respect. I'm hoping for fairness and understanding in your responses. This whole experience has been painful, confusing, and emotional. I want to move forward but also learn from what happened. Your judgment means a lot to me as I try to find the best path for healing, for myself, my sister, and maybe even my family. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. That wraps up today's episode of r/Payback. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories.